All right, so today we're doing a live review of the McCarthy's 6-year-old Oregon single malt whiskey, and this is from Hood River Distillers. I think it's Clear Creek also, but yeah, Hood River Distillers, 50% ABV or 100 proof, non-chill filtered. I think it's natural color too. I'm assuming. I can't see why it wouldn't be. It has a question mark. For some reason, my notes say natural color question mark, but I'm pretty sure this is natural color. And this uses new and used Garryana oak casks. So that's the Oregon oak casks. So that's a little a little bit of a fresh take. Some Oregon oak in there. And if you're visiting us from YouTube, this was live on Twitch TV. If you want to join us on Twitch TV, 11 a.m. Eastern Time for spirits-related content, I'd love to have you here. See that Woodford Reserve? Yeah, our friend Bee's Knees has been with us now for eight months subscription with the channel, and if you subscribe. You can take any of my selection of fine spirits and put them in our community infinity bottle here. So Beezy's elected to have some Woodford Reserve Double Oak added to our community bottle. Yeah, so this is again the first American single malt, and this is actually now a ratified category, and before it wasn't. This was a pioneering spirit in that way, I suppose. Now, that being said, just because it's an American single malt does not mean it can't use 100% peat malted Scottish barley. So this is got as much peat in it as anything from Islay. It is peaty as hell, full on smoke and peat characters with an American Oregon oak barrel. Again, first fill and refill. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get anything out of our whiskey opus on this particular distillery because it is not in there. It is small enough that it is not in there. But again, this is the same distillery that they do all kinds of different things. We can actually look at their website just for a minute and you'll see what I mean. It says on the back here, Clear Creek Distillery, or it's also Hood River Distillers is the same people, I suppose. Again, we're going to rate this at a 100, 25 on aroma, 25 palate, 25 finish, 10 on texture, and 15 for my personal experience. And while we give that a minute to rest, what we can do is we can go to Hood River Distillers, just on the web Jamaica site. And this is all their products. They have quite a few. I think they're pretty well known for this brandy here, but of course they have a whole range of this peated American single malt. This one Trails and 8-year-old straight bourbon whiskey. This has also appeared near me, and this is it's not a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey as it's made in Oregon, but it is still a bourbon whiskey, but is also finished with these Garryana oak casks or Oregon oak casks. Looks like they did some time with the old vodka. And they have all kinds of these particular McCarthy's offerings. This one is an Oloroso cask. Um, I only was able to get this. This is all their brands here. Look at all that. I was only able to get these like kind of standard 6-year-old one near me. I think this one is a lower proof one, lower age, no age statement. This one is PX sherry cask finish, and again this black one's single barrel, and they also have one that's Oloroso, I believe. Yeah, this black one's Oloroso. But it seems like there's also a single barrel cask strength version. I was quite surprised to even be able to get this near me, and I probably won't be able to get any of these other offerings. So started my liquor collection a little early with the gin. Yeah. That's a nice thing about gin is it's not terribly expensive because they just rip that thing right off the still into the bottle. You don't have to like do any of that weird aging in the barrel thing. It makes it a lot easier to pump that shit out. But it also could just be that those gin producers, they haven't caught on to how much we're willing to pay for good gin. Gin's pretty economical in that respect. Yeah, we're having some McCarthy's 6-year-old Oregon single malt. That is what the wheel has determined we should review this today. That's what we will be doing. On level with Monkey? Wow, that's kind of wild. But you paid twice the price for the Monkey, didn't you? That's pretty much what it works out to, I think. Where's this? Where's this? What's it called? Trails End Bourbon. Yeah, you can get this near me too. There's a 8-year, a 10-year, and there's an 8-year that's finished in apple brandy barrels. That's probably fucking an adventure. Straight single, no barrel finish. No barrel finish. That being said, it is again peated Scottish barley, and oops, and this uses Oregon oak rather than like, or I guess Garyana oak rather than like your typical American white oak. So, let's see. Let's see what they say. See what they say this particular barrel is good for. My understanding is like it's more like spicier and stuff like that, but I'm wondering what they say. And by they, I just mean like people in general. A bottle and color. Yeah, it's for some reason I don't have this written as natural color. It says natural color question mark. But this is natural color. I don't know why my notes have a question mark. I'm not finding a great resource for this. That's not a video. I don't want to play a video. Yes, and I'm not finding it. I feel like I've found this resource before, but I can't find it right now. Anyway, it's not a big deal. Point being, this is not your typical American white oak. It's new and used Gariana oak, and again, yes, it's 100% peated Scottish malted barley. So there's no like, it's not like bourbon or anything. It's not like corn or any kind of weird rye or anything like in the mash bill. It's just it's single malt whiskey, peated single malt whiskey. I can't like dig up for you exactly what Gariana oak is supposed to do. My understanding is it's kind of like spicier. It's more on the spicy kind of end, but not like potpourri spicy like Hungarian. More like baking spicy. More like deeper on the like maybe your cinnamon is more like a clove or something like that. But I can't remember exactly, and I can't find the resource. But well, whatever we taste is whatever we taste. But there is like differences that you're supposed to be able to detect. But at the end of the day, it's a new charred oak barrel, and there is also reused. But you know, a new charred oak barrel is a new charred oak barrel is a new charred oak barrel. It's going to have a lot of similarities, but there are some kind of like small differences in between the particular oak versions. Interesting. So right on the get-go, there's a little bit of kind of typical like wood smoke. There's also kind of like a grassy, vegetal, earthy note. You kind of get some of that like bourbony essence, sort of from it. Again, since this is using virgin Gariana oak barrels, you're probably going to get some of that kind of bourbony kind of character. Because one of the things you have to remember is like a lot of bourbon's flavor comes from the new charred oak barrel. It doesn't come from like the mash bill really. The loudest speaker in bourbon is the barrel. So since this does have some new Gariana oak barrels in it, it's going to have some kind of like that kind of sweeter, oakier, spicier bourbon character. But yeah, I think predominantly right now there's some like vegetal character, but there's also like a wood smoke character. And there's like an underlying sweetness with that wood smoke, almost like it's almost protein. There is an interesting kind of scent about it, though. I think this has changed a little bit since I've been into it last because it's not exactly what I remember. I feel like there's a little bit of like baking spicy kind of thing going on, but I can't tell exactly what. And there's again like kind of like an oakiness or like and like a sweetness that is like very reminiscent of bourbon. Um, in a lot of ways, it's like it feels somewhat like a peated bourbon right now. which I'm sure is actually a thing, but probably not a very common thing. But I am getting like what feels like kind of like a sweet protein note, like smoked maple bacon or something like that. All right, we're gonna send it to the palate. Cheers. Kind of drinks a lot like an Isla, honestly. Initially, you get some of that wood smoke character as you hold it on the tongue. Get that some of that vegetal grassiness, and then you get some of that deeper earthy notes, a little bit on the mucky side. Then it's a little bit spicy. You get a little bit of that like I don't know what spice we're gonna call it right away, but there's definitely a spicy baking spice character into the finish. It's a bit woody. Finish is not terribly long. We'll call it medium. We want to try to pick at some of those more barrel related notes. I feel like I got a little bit peat blasted on that first sip, which is kind of like to be expected. I'm getting some of that like see the peat differs from Lafroig peat. So one of the immediate differences that I can easily pick out is it's not nearly as medicinal. So one of the characteristics you often get people describing Lafroig is like a Band-Aid, iodine, hospital, if that makes any sense. This kind of like medicinal note is not really here at all. You kind of get the wood smoke character of it, and you get a little bit of the protein, which is you get a little bit of protein with Lafroig too. It's probably not as deep on the earth notes, and it's not as it's almost like a little muckier. Like I don't want to say it's tarry, but it's like maybe a little less bitter and a little bit muckier, which kind of like puts it in more like the Ardbeg direction. But that might just be like my interpretation of it right this second. But definitely like lower on the peat related note, not the peat related notes, the like medicinal related notes. Again, like your iodine Band-Aid, hospital kind of character. There's a lot of like sweetness coming out of it now, so we're kind of like acclimating a bit. There's the smoky component on the nose is still there. A little bit of like that protein is in there. But it's coming in with like a sweet, like a almost like a syrupy sweet note, which is I think like this kind of virgin oak barrel kind of talking. It's kind of like that bandit smell in the Lefroy Select, yeah, you definitely would get. It's like a characteristic, I think, that iodine Band-Aid thing. It's pretty characteristic of Lefroy. They use some percentage of the barley in Lefroy is not Port Ellen. It's their own peat maltings, so they get a little bit of their own character in there. There are some Lefroigs that you can get that are 100% Lefroy malted barley instead of like a mix of Port Ellen and their own, I think is how they usually do it. I think they get like mostly Port Ellen, but then they like mix like 10% of their own, or I don't know what the percentage is, but they do their own maltings with their own peat because they have their particular peat that they harvest themselves is going to be a little different in character than what you get from the commercial malting. And I think there are offerings you can get from Lefroy, and usually I think they're older age statements that are like 100% their own peat. I can't remember which ones off the top of my head, but I seem to think I was reading something about one of the older, like 25-year or older, like that was 100% Lefroy's own peat, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But this is missing that kind of like medicinal character. I wouldn't say there's anything really medicinal going on here. At least not for me. It's more like in that wood smoke, slight protein realm. And then you kind of have like an encroaching sweetness, which I want to say some percentage of is fruity, but I'm having a hard time like locking onto it. Like what fruit you would call it. There is like a sweet, feels like there's a sweet kind of grilled apple component. But there also is like maybe like a sweet grilled cherry component. I don't know, like apples and cherries. But again, it's like the sweetness is pretty strong, and it's more than like fruit sweetness. So I would be surprised if you could like go for a stretch and have this be like, say, reminiscent of some kind of like barbecue sauce that has fruit in it. I don't know if that's a thing, like a fucking applewood barbecue sauce or something like that. It's not really quite what I'm smelling, but we're just trying to throw darts here. You know, smoke is getting like sweeter. It's kind of like smoky right on the entry. It's mostly smoky. But you do get some of these like sweet fruit components. A little bit of spice on the palate. I'll call it like cinnamon spice on the palate. And then after you hold it for a little bit, you got that sweet fruit. So if we back up, on the entry, smoke, kind of sweet orchard / cherry fruit notes. Then you get some of that baking spice, that cinnamon, and then like the vegetal earthy notes kind of show up. That's kind of like the palate transition for me, roughly. It's definitely pretty sweet. And it's sweetness in the same way that like a bourbon is sweet. So it's kind of got like the Maybe not as sweet as like the Woodford, but like the typical bourbon sweetnesses that you get, kind of like brown sugar rum, like dark syrup rum, kind of in here. That being said, again, the finish is not terribly long in length. There's no way I would call it longer than medium. Like I'm getting some malts peeking through there. Nose is interesting. That being said, it's giving me like everything I'm expecting and nothing I'm not expecting. So and by that I mean it's like, hey, you get some of that smoke, you get some of those peat related notes, you get some fruity notes, you get some sweet notes. It's not like creating some kind of crazy, intricate sets of aromas that are very like unique and emergent. But there's a good amount of layers of complexity going on within what's going on in there. But it's not doing the thing. And when I say the thing, it's not doing that thing where like you get in there and every time it's a little different and the aromas are combining in strange ways to make like very interesting note combinations. Every single time it's a little different, a little more interesting. It's not doing that thing. There's just like still several layers of like smoke and sweet and fruit and like vegetal earthy characters. Like it's kind of layered in that way. But it's not like recombining into emergent kind of notes like some of these really like crazy noses tend to do. So like barbecue, I don't know why, but like the vegetal note dandelion comes to mind. Kind of like a sweet earthiness, but the earthiness is drier. It's not like thick and viscous. Again, the finish is like a mix between like a peated thing and like a new charred oak thing. It's like it's got that baking spice thing going on. It's got some of that earthy component going on, some vegetal notes, but it also has some oak and has some like we'll say syrup sweetness. That being said, again, yeah, it's not going to last forever and ever. All right, so at 25, let's consider the aroma. And I think this doesn't quite do the thing that like pole vaults it into the top category for me. It's just not quite there with that. That being said, despite of like, except with the exception of like sort of acclimating to sort of the peat characters and digging into some of the sweetnesses underneath, it's not really doing any much other development. And again, we could do as some would recommend and have this sit here for another half an hour and see if things change. But again, I get the feeling that I want to keep my judgments based on what's reasonable. I don't think like necessarily for most people you're going to want to wait an hour to rest something. That being said, there is several strong notes. There is some good combinations, but it's not doing the thing. That thing that I want it to do to give it a score above 20 is not, it's not doing it. We could get that fruit into like a pear, but it's not doing the thing. It's really good though. Give it 20. It's got to do the thing to get over 20, man. It's got to do the thing. If it doesn't do the thing, it's not getting over 20. The thing, yeah, it's got to do the thing, man. It's got to do the like randomly emergent flavor combination thing. Because some of them are doing it. And I think it has to at least do that. To be in the top echelons of possible aromas. Alright. On the palate. That sweetness, it's really permeating all the other notes. That smoke is a little, that campfire smoke is a little sweet. You kind of like honeyed orchard fruit, honeyed cherry, grilled. Kind of get like some of that dandelion-esque vegetation, but it's like sweet. And you get that some of that earthiness, some of that sludgy earthiness. To me, it's coming across almost black licorice-like, but I know it's like that earthy note, that deep earthy kind of character, except it's been sweetened. Again, like I said at first, and kind of like going more in that like Ardbeg, almost tarry direction. It's kind of very similar to that, or right at the outset. It's kind of like that tarry kind of earthiness, almost like earthy syrup. I do like the palette. I'm gonna have to try the palette again, I think, to rate it. The palette's got a lot of notes. It's got a good development of flavors. It's pretty impressive, actually. spicier this time. Sometimes you go in there and get some of those spice notes in the mix. Mm. Give it 21 on the palate. Deserves it. We're going to talk about the finish, which we already know the finish is like a little bit on the like shorter side from a duration perspective. I'm interested in how much the flavor can make up for that. Yeah, definitely feeling that like honeyed grilled cherry sort of thing. Starts with some like clove spice, earthiness. Get some oak in there. Mostly just a mix of that like sweet, spicy, earthy note and oak are kind of like going the distance. It's not like crazy. Finish is easily the worst part. Yeah, I think we're gonna give the finish another stab here, but the fact that the flavors are kind of like different enough and compacted enough that I feel like I need to do some reassessment is I guess a credit. We've had to do that a few times. That's about the same. Again, some kind of like cloves, some earthiness, some sweet earthiness, maybe a little bit of that like sugary dandelion things creeping in. But a little bit oaky, spicy earth thing. I'll give it 18. I think that's fair. Alright, so out of 10, we're going to talk about the texture. It's not particularly viscous. Again, it is at 100 proof, so we're not getting like a whole bucket of water here, but So far, nothing about the palette has jumped out at me from a texture perspective, so it's probably like pretty like fair. You know, like probably not particularly thick or anything. It's a pretty reasonable oiliness, but nothing that stands out to me personally. Give it 6. All right. 15. Let's talk about my personal experience with this McCarthy's first American single malt whiskey, aged 6 years in new and used Girion oak. Again, 100% peated Scottish barley. It is a little different. It's got some things on it about it that are a little different and a little interesting. Again, it is. If you told me that this was an Islay whiskey that was aged in virgin oak, I would believe you. It is very similar to what you would get out of an Islay whiskey. It's full on peat, full peat flavors, full smoky. You get that earthiness on the back end, a little bit of that vegetal character. But the barrel is like really, you can taste it. That barrel is up front and center, and I don't mean like from like a finishing barrel sort of sense, but more like yeah, you can tell that this has been aged in something that feels virgin oaky. And if you told me this was like, I don't know, some kind of Port Ellen distillery, Port Ellen malting related distillery that had was aged in virgin oak, I wouldn't be surprised. That being said, it's a little bit different than virgin oak. There is a little bit, the spiciness is a little different here. There's kind of like an edge to the spiciness that is not quite bourbon-esque, and I don't know if that's the Gariana oak part or not exactly. It is a little different in that way. Some of the spice character is a little different. It's hard to describe exactly. That being said, it's very sweet. It's kind of interesting. It is definitely like something that stands out. I don't think you're going to get a single malt from any other distillery that's going to taste like this. This is probably the only place you're going to get a whiskey like this is this particular offering. That being said, no part of it is wild beyond imagining. It kind of just tastes somewhat like a virgin oak Islay kind of thing. That I would guess. Nothing is like blowing my mind here. Maybe if I had access to like some of the other offerings like the Oloroso or the PX, maybe if I had it at cask strength or whatever, there's something to be said. There's also a very hard to get version that's aged exclusively in rum barrels, which I do not have access to. Those would probably be even more wild and maybe would be considered wild. But this one simply just stands out to me. We'll call it 10 out of 15. Definitely a unique experience, but nothing wild. So if we go 20 and 21 and 18 and 6 and 10 is 75. 75 out of 100. Calls it great whiskey. It is great. It is a great whiskey.